guess without more ado, we're going to start with the main story of the week and the main match of the week, which is this Saturday's game between the Lions and Japan.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's an interesting matchup. It's what are they calling? It's the 1888 Cup, I believe.
I can't imagine that the Lions played Japan in 1888. No, but maybe they did.
Maybe they did. But that's what we're branding it as. I only realised that as I was looking up this. But it's going to be Saturday, obviously 26th of June, Murrayfield, as we all know, and kickoff is 3:00 local times. Nice and handy afternoon game on Saturday, just a nice headline event. It's definitely a curiosity, because just what a game. The last time we saw the Cherry Blossoms, they were in flying form in their home World Cup and just falling short to the eventual world champions in South Africa, and now they have a chance to kind of lock horns with South Africa's next opponents themselves. It's just a curious little triangle there,
and another mystery box for Warren Gatland to open up. He's good. It's the other test team he's playing also hasn't played a game in 2 years, so there's not a lot of tape to work with apart from back in that World Cup. But the game itself should just be a great occasion. It's not an everyday occurrence when the Lions play at home. I think the last time they did was I think it was 2005 against Argentina was the last time they played a home game. That's exciting. It's also exciting, obviously, in the context of COVID times. There are going to be some fans. I think 16,500 are going to get into Murrayfield, and doubtless will make a good atmosphere of it. It's definitely an exciting game, and definitely going to be a big occasion. But from both teams' point of view, there's a wee bit of stakes as well. It's an interesting fixture for the Lions. You know, they're preparing for a match with a Springbok side that is like, it wins games through physicality, through pressure defense, through
mauls
set piece,
to penalties, to lineouts, to mauls, kind of things.
It's a slow pace but physical and pressure based game, and then Japan are really the polar opposite.
Almost the antithesis of that. High tempo, lots of ball in play, lots of skills, lots of keep the ball alive, as Raj would say, KBA instincts, and some really good distributors out there.
Line picking and attacking instincts and making line breaks count and winning the game with offense, kind of what Japan is about. And therefore it's a different prospect than playing the Springboks entirely. Now it is a pre-season kind of game if you're Warren Gatland, but it is the first of just 6 games he has to prepare for the test match.
Slightly abbreviated schedule that they're operating with, so it'll be very important for just seeing what combinations work, how he wants to play, styles of play. How do you try and implement a style of play when you're getting players from 4 different nations together? That's the big challenge with this Lions thing. Getting
the combinations going is going to be very interesting. There's a lot of mixing and matching and seeing what works, but it does have to be done quickly, and it does have to be done on the fly. So one of the main things that I'm going to be on the lookout for anyway across these warm-up games in advance of the test series is just little indications as to how the Lions might approach the test series tactically.
Sure.
None of this stuff is going to be definitive, but I definitely think that there's scope to just to getting an idea for what Gatland is thinking about the test series, how he's looking to approach it. There'll be a few hints here and there, and there's kind of this dichotomy playing in my head of kind of 2 distinct tactical directions that the Lions can go about beating the Springboks, because obviously we're going to talk about the Springboks in great length as the test series approaches. But I think that there's definitely a couple of distinctive ways of beating them. There's like 2 different models, which I might call like the Wales model and the New Zealand model.
Right.
And what I mean by that, I think, is the first one would be the Wales model, how Gatland might have looked to do it and nearly did it in the World Cup. Has to do with looking at where the Springboks get their points from, this Springbok team under Rassie Erasmus and Jack Niemnaber. And in terms of like how do they win games is by accruing points like any rugby team. Where do those points come from? If you're looking at the Springbok team, it's all about sort of pressure. It's a pressure game. It's about pressure on defense, pressure in the contact area through physicality, aerial pressure,
scrums, mauls, lineouts, set pieces in general.
Defense, the contact area, the breakdown, the set piece. Just putting your team under pressure in all of those areas and using that to generate points, be it through penalties and then territory, or then also ultimately tries. I mean, they generate as many tries from their defense as they do from their offense, really, this Springbok team. And so in terms of, they're not like a razzle-dazzle team. They're not going to play with that sort of flowy tempo. And so if you're a coach and you're looking at that team and you're saying, well, how do I negate that? How do I prevent them from getting points against us in that way? I think the way that Gatland looked at it during the World Cup, and the way that they might look at it this time around, is simply take those pressure points away. Lock down the scrum, lock down the set piece. That's going to be vital no matter what game plan you're looking to implement.
Yeah.
But then also just like not allowing their defense to put pressure on you by not letting them into the game.
Yeah.
Like I get, it might be the case that if you're going down this route, Gatland's ideal game doesn't involve Lukhanyo Am at all.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't feature from a defensive read point of view because
what
the ball
has already been kicked.
Because the ball has already been kicked.
That's what we saw in the World Cup semi-final. It is a hell of a lot of kicking.
It is. But it makes sense. Like it's a powerful argument when you're looking at where the Springboks' points coming from, the serious pressure that they put on you from a defensive point of view. You can just say to yourself, listen, if we front up into contact, if we can lock down the set piece, and then don't let their defense into the way, deal with the high field bombs, don't let their defense in, and then just kick smarter and better than the Springboks.
Murray v Faf in the box kicking duel.
Well, indeed, yeah. The argument against it is that you end up playing a game very similar to how the Springboks play.
Yeah.
You know, your game, the winning of the game, it comes down to who edges that set piece battle and who edges those little contact areas and those little moments in the territory battle and who gives away the fewest penalties and all those small dynamics.
Yeah.
But it's a powerful argument because if you do it right, you take away what the Boks are so good at. You don't let them get the defensive pressure on you. You don't let them force errors and exploit them in that way.
And because if you can stay composed, then they are rockable as well. When they're frustrated, they can be the ones to give those penalties away, and you can edge it that way. That definitely makes a lot of sense. Definitely, the neutrals and the rugby purists are going no.
Yeah, well, indeed,
because you can see the writing on the wall for such an ugly game. Whereas the All Black model is a bit more razzle dazzle, and it involves multiple distributors and trying to just puncture through them.
Well, indeed, the powerful argument for the other way of approaching the game is that it breaks up what the Boks are trying to do. I mean, to some extent, it makes sense to take away their defense, to kick a lot, to play composed Wales model. We'll try and edge the small battles. But on the other hand, you're never taking the Springboks out of their comfort zone when you're playing that way. You're playing a Springbok style game out in South Africa,
which is their tempo.
Which is dangerous.
It is.
Whereas if you can employ the sort of model that the All Blacks have, which obviously the All Blacks have had mixed success against the Springboks, not perfect by any stretch, but if you look at how they beat them in the World Cup, it was simply by changing that game, by making the game different, making it about other things, getting outside of that blitz defence, breaking that defence, and then punishing it. Once you find your men in space, your talented outside backs, punishing it with scores, being relentless once you've broken that line until you get a try, and then scoring in just quicker... in quicker time than the Springboks.
With a quicker team than the Springboks is definitely a recipe for success, especially if they're a little bit lethargic and a little bit sluggish. Then you can definitely blitz Safa teams and they struggle to accrue points rapidly to come back. So that's definitely what we'd love to see is an ambition to play that way, just purely because of the caliber of the players that they have there. Like, definitely you feed into a bit of both. One doesn't preclude the other necessarily. Like, you do empower your halfbacks to kick some of the ball. You do want to try and take Lukhanyo Am out of the game, but you also want a capacity to inject tempo and seize tries. So they're probably, the ideal is a blend of both that has a very composed team that can also spring into life and use all of its weapons, because ultimately you're selecting the best players from four nations. You have almost an onus upon yourself to try and play the best rugby that you can. But then whatever the picture is presented to them, like if things like that, if they're trying to play an ambitious All Black model but then the scrum's not being locked down or something like that, it'll all fall like a house of cards very quickly if things like the set piece, like the basics, are not up to snuff. And
I don't think that the set piece even comes into the tactical question. I think you need it both.
Anyway.
And I don't think even necessarily systems come into it. I mean, and you're going to need to have, as you say, the capacity to work the ball through phases. You're going to need your multi-phase pods and your first phase starter moves, no matter what you're doing. But I definitely think there's a tactical distinction between one and the other, between kicking most of the ball in your half and in the midfield, playing conservative, not allowing that Bok defense to generate points, because it's easy to say, listen, get thin on the ball and whip it wide, but when you watch that Bok defense at its very best, and you've got like Peter Steff and Lacanio Am and Makazole Mpimpe shooting out of the line, making good reads, but also just coming up so hard and so aggressive, often in a space of about 20-25 metres.
And then when they finally get you, the hit is tough and physical.
Yeah, and sometimes it yields like an intercept try. You look at Colby's try in the World Cup final when they spilled the ball and they caught them on the counter. Like, that defence generates points for them, and if you're going to be trying to mix it with them and getting outside of them, there's as much chance of you conceding a score as making one. So there's definitely I think it's not without risk as much as admirable as it is. But there's an interesting conversation to be had about if you can get outside it. I remember the All Blacks in that first game being pummeled by the Springboks in a very Springboky kind of game for 20 minutes, and they had the 6-0 lead. And then I think it was just a crossfield kick from Richie Mo'unga
that opened them up.
They finally got outside them, and then the All Blacks had the class and the ability to find the score then from that one singular line break. They didn't take the foot off the neck until they'd scored. And if I think, like, you look at Rhys Sammet, you look at Hogg, you look at Liam Williams, you look at Duhan van der Merwe, the Lions have the capacity to be that team, to find the space and then be relentless, but there's inherent risk in doing it. And I definitely think, when you can talk about playing into the box hands by playing a slow game, but sometimes you can play into the hands of that defense by trying to play quick, especially at altitude. That's not your conditions. So I think there's like a serious conversation has to be had about how they approach sort of that first test. And that's not to say that they're going to lean 100% into one way or another. I think you need the ability to do both. I think
you do.
But I think at the same time, one is going to be a plan A and one is going to be a plan B, and I think you're going to get an indication from these warm-up games as to which they're leaning into.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting that way, just looking at just the recent records of some of the teams that make up the Lions versus the Springboks. The one with the out and out worst, Scotland obviously struggle with them as well, but give them a right rattle. England are the ones who really can't deal with what Saffers are bringing at all, because England like to bully teams physically, but also like to play with an offensive tempo, a zip to their kind of ball in hand stuff that once it's disrupted, they look very rudderless. Whereas both Wales and Ireland are pretty comfortable in a slow kicking game, and so are South Africa. So you see quite a lot of test matches between those nations that just go 3-pointer for 3-pointer, tit for tat, like the World Cup semi-final, and it just ends up being one or two clutch moments that decide the fixture. It's interesting because the Lions don't necessarily play like the sum of their parts at all, but there's different seeds of evidence in that core group for how to play against the Springbok team and find some success. But then, as you say,
there's wildly different squads you could choose depending on which way you want to go.
And they only have a small number of games starting with this Japan fixture to try and find themselves. And the thing about this Japan matchup that they have obviously this weekend is, with Japan being so associated with running the ball basically and being quick, high tempo, it's almost inevitable that the Lions will be the slower but more physical team, I would think. Just looking on paper at the two matchups, it's likely that the Lions will try and be the team applying the squeeze at set piece, the team trying to get a cohesive rolling maul, the team trying to launch from those kinds of set piece, and with the selection of actually Aki and Henshaw in the centres for them as well, it's going to be a shutdown kind of, let's try and be physical and stop their rhythm and attack them at the nuts and bolts, which, while making perfect sense on paper for a game against Japan, with the context of only a few games to warm up for the Springboks, will that inform, if they're just used to playing that way, will that inform how they go into the test series?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably as good a point as any to pivot into the squads themselves. I think certainly what you're saying makes a lot of sense, that looking at this Lions team, that it's the Wales like, this is just the Japan game, but it seems to be leaning into that Wales mold of how to beat the Springboks as opposed to that All Blacks mode. And so the team that actually is going to take the field this week is Rory Sutherland at loose head, Ken Owens at hooker, Xander at tight head, Henderson and Alan Wynne-Jones in the locks, Tyg Byrne at 6. Hamish Watson was picked at 7, but actually has picked up a concussion in training, which is
hopefully
interesting.
That's okay for him, because it's as we say, it's only a short turnaround, and if it's in any way dodgy. You may be very unlucky. It's not a good timing.
It's terrible timing, and you'd wonder what they're like. Obviously, accidents happen, but you would wonder what's going on in training. Certainly, the little bits of footage that have come out there seem to be intense. I've been watching a lot more strength and conditioning than I have ball play from the Lions so far, and it remains to be seen how effective that proves. So anyway, Justin Tipperick comes in, not a bad replacement, to bring in at 7. Jack Conan's at 8, an extremely mobile back row, as mobile as they can select. Conor Murray is at 9, Dan Biggar at 10, Bundyaki 12, Henshaw 13, and then the back 3 of Duhan, Van der Merwe, Josh Adams and Liam Williams.
First Lions team of 2021, and it's a good one.
And the first Lions team to not include an English player since 1950.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. There you go. That's an impressive stat. It was going to be the first one to not have a Welsh back rower in quite a while, but then the Mish obviously got that knock, and in comes Tipperick. But Tipperick is a very, very able replacement as well.
Indeed.
It's a bloody good team. It on paper it looks formidable.
There are some English on the bench as well. Jamie George is covering hooker, Wyn Jones and Tyg Furlong covering prop, not bad impact. Courtney Laws covering lock. Faletau covering the back row, Ali Price covering scrum half, Owen Farrell covering 10, and Anthony Watson covering the backs as well.
3. Yeah,
so plenty of English on that bench to sort of even out the stats there.
Yeah, kind of similar to how I was hypothetically picking. I was jilting all the jilted Englishmen to come off the bench with a bit of fire in their belly. Yeah, no, it might work.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like, I definitely think that back row excites me.
Yeah.
But then there's a juxtaposition in terms of what I'm saying between, you know, the loosey-goosey kind of play, because I think that back row is really much more suited towards the All Black way of playing the All Blacks. They're link men.
Tyg Byrne out wide and Conan a little wider, and then some backs running
Tipperick
off
can
them.
play out wide.
They're all rangy and ball players, so it's dangerous.
And yet the centres and the front row is much more sort of, well, actually Ken Owen's a bit of a ball player as well, but the centre certainly is much more defence oriented. And I'll just be looking at you. There's only so much you can extrapolate from the squads themselves, but I'll definitely just be watching to see, is the emphasis of this Lions team on getting set defensively, getting our rhythms and combinations together defensively, and in terms of the kick chase, all of those important things, are we going to be just looking to exert pressure on the Japanese and then building from there? Or are they going to be deliberately working in some offense? Because so far,
it would be nice to see them launch off like midfield lineouts, you know, because there's so much scope for attacking teams with that of that set piece. And one of my least favourite habits of, to be honest, not many teams, but it's Ireland more generally, is like setting up a truck and hitting it up in the midfield and then box kicking it to the 22, as if, even if you gather it from the 22 with no set piece, that's not as dangerous as a first phase strike move from your own 10 metre line.
No,
like
indeed.
If well drilled and well executed.
Yeah, but it's all about how they want to play those test matches, and it's definitely, I'll definitely watch with keen interest and I definitely think it adds intrigue to these games as well. Just how are they looking to approach it, as well as who's playing well and who's not.
Which because is a big factor too, because you can play yourself in and out of jerseys with this short amount of time.
You can to some extent, but I think the game plan and how tactically the Lions are looking to approach this test series is going to inform selection as much as anything else. And so it's easy to say, you know, Tipperick is a better player than whoever, than Hamish Watson or than Sam Simmons, but it just might be that the way they want to play the Lions makes a lot more sense to have Simmons in for whatever reason. So I definitely think that's like it's the game plan is as interesting to watch as individual form. But there is another factor to this game, as well as just all the Lions intrigue, and that is Japan,
which is a fascinating unknown quantity at the moment.
Tier 1 team, is this their first game as an official?
It is their first official game team? As a Tier 1 team, and well deserved. They've kind of been chalking up the merits. Obviously, big scalps in most recently Ireland and Scotland, but South Africa the few years prior. So they've been building for quite a while, and the top league and the standard of the top league has been increasing as well steadily over the last few years. The marquee signings, obviously following Bowden Barrett coming in there, there's a lot of money and infrastructure in Japanese rugby, and it makes all the sense in the world that they've been given Tier 1 status, and they have a few exciting games. This is the first of their summer tour, but they're playing Ireland as well, aren't they? And I think they might be playing the US at some point.
No, I think they're playing England
as well.
They might be, anyway. I'll have to double check that, but certainly over the coming weeks they have a couple of other other games.
Yeah.
Ireland certainly. And Jamie Joseph gets to put a squad together and go tour for the first time since the World Cup.
Yeah.
And it's a huge, massive opportunity. This is another big match for them. If they were to somehow pull off a win, then it would potentially rival in terms of scale what they did in the last two World Cups, pulling off those scalps. It would be monumental of them to do that, and there certainly are no mugs. One thing we know about Japan is they have quality across the board. Joseph has named his squad. There are a few key sort of differences.
In terms of the team that we remember from the World Cup, what a team that it was. There are a few key men missing in terms of this one screaming at me is Kenki Fukuoka, who the lightning winger, Dr. Kenki, Luke Thompson as well, stalwart in the pack. A few of those pack, Shota Hori as well, missing too. Nagare
from Nine, who started more or less every game in that whole World Cup cycle, seemed to be about Nagare, and they just deemed him not fit to play this time out, and so they're brand new at scrum half.
Tanaka's not there either, so it is brand new scrum halves as well.
That's it. The core of that squad has been kept together. Jimeno is in the squad. I'm not sure about his availability for this week, given was just played in the Super Rugby final the other week. Inagaki's still there. Labashanya, Michael Leach is still captain. That whole back row is very good. Yu Tamura is still there. That class centre partnership of Nakamura and Raffaelli.
Awesome.
Matsushima still around from Clermont. So they'd like the core of that team minus a couple of heads is still there. And then also they're fresh with a load of young talent as well, which is doubtless exciting.
Absolutely.
To hear Jamie Joseph talking about it, like he himself doesn't know what to expect to some degree, but we know they have quality.
We do know they have absolute quality, and no less than Jamie Joseph as well. Is no mug at all. I'd expect a few set piece strike plays for sure, and just a general kind of tempo and drive to be accurate. That like at their worst, they're a little inaccurate. Japan, when you see them fail, it's not for the lack of trying, it's just sometimes the execution lets them down when they're just not quite sharp. But when things click, they are looking for killer passes and incisive lines. So like there's a chance if the Lions team are a little bit off and a little bit out of sync, that they can be sliced open by a very accurate Japan attack.
No question. And Japan, like it's hard to know how seamlessly they'll slot back into their 2019 selves. But if they're up against a Lions team who are at equal parts disjointed and have that weight of expectation playing a home game, there's this ego thing with the Lions as well, where they're convinced they should win all of these games. They're picked for that reason. And yet we routinely see in these warm-up games the Lions get rattled in advance of the series. We see them lose games sometimes.
You certainly see them get disjointed. You see different 15s not quite work. You see combinations not quite gel. So
and there's scope to put doubts in minds. If Japan can start quick, I think there's a couple of key factors both on offense and defense. Obviously, if they can test the sort of how robust and joined together that defensive partnership is in the midfield. Obviously Aki and Henshaw have played together loads of times.
I think the selection is based on that kind of they want a bit of cohesion in that area specifically,
because it's danger. From a Lions point of view, that's
Raffaelli was picking passes.
Nakamura no mug either,
his distribution was so otherworldly in the World Cup. He was finding excellent offloads, and the guys outside him are so dangerous. So it's a big test for.
And that matchup is fun between him and Henshaw on the 13 channel.
Because Henshaw's been defending like a demon all season as well. So you have that cancelling out. The last time we saw the matchup that failed, the last game we saw Japan in was via the Springboks,
and it was similar.
It was similar. It was an offensive mind against a defensive mind, and it was the whole game just went the Springbok way, and it started from tighter than that, but that was just one of the areas. Raffaelli did get a pass outside him, and got a few nice ones still, because their high quality players will get moments against each other. But the biggest point of concern, I would say, from that last game for Japan was just that big rolling maul that the Springboks were able to affect, that they didn't quite have either the savvy or the techers to sack before it went 50 metres and to the try line, because you just got to haul it down if you can't stop it. And the Lions will look to attack them there. Set piece will be key when you have Henderson, Alan Wynne-Jones and Byrne.
It's definite quality, but they're not too many out and out mauling forwards in there. I wouldn't say. No. Like Itojo classify as a mauling expert. But like even that back row, like none of them love to maul. I don't think that's what any of them have.
I'd say those two rows, Henderson and Alan Wynne-Jones, are pretty maul aficionados.
It's within the remit of the second row to be that way, but from an offensive point of view, like it does take some doing to do a maul like that. I think defensively, the jackal is what was so powerful for him at the World Cup. I remember Inagaki getting big steals, Himeno obviously getting loads.
Himeno's fresh off Super Rugby campaign as well, so he'll be sharp.
If they can catch the Lions just not supporting on one or two carries and get a couple of key jackal steals and just cause them to tighten up, cause them to commit that extra man to the breakdown and just slow everything down, they will likely turn them into sort of a kicking team, and the Lions will lean on to, okay, let's not overplay here, let's put pressure on them and defend and kick the ball. Murray and Bigger will certainly steal
the
that
likes
chip.
of Matsushima to come running back at
That's
you.
it, exactly. They want the Lions receding into their shell and altering their game plan and just feeling a little bit unsure of themselves. A couple of key jackal steals here and there, and then if Lafayette can get the better of Henshaw in a key moment and they can get to the outside and then just be clinical once they're there, which I don't doubt that they'll be able to do. I think if you give them a 3-on-2, they'll score.
They'll take it.
And that's the joy of this, and so it's a game that isn't without intrigue and isn't without alarm if you're the Lions.
Yeah, absolutely. And with all that, I guess, is there anything else to preview? Have you anything else on mind, or do you want to say how you think it's going to go?
Yeah, I mean, like obviously we're looking in the main on from the tactical point of view from the Lions, but I definitely just think it'll be interesting to see if they try and blitz from a defensive point of view, if they try and blitz that Japanese attack, that wide attack. The defensive shape of the Lions is going to be very interesting to see.
Are they pushing off and drifting back? Are they shooting up and shutting the door?
It's brand new. It's a brand new system.
As you say, these are the games that will get the little indicators, the little clues as to how they will approach the Test series when it comes up as well. But sleep not on Japan, because they could catch you napping.
Yeah, I definitely think it'll be a good game. I think the Japanese will be game for it. I think they'll be motivated. I think it'll be a Lions win, but after 60 minutes is only. I think it'll be tight.
Similar to those games.
60 minutes.
Similar to those games we saw Japan play in Twickenham against England, where they were
putting
a very shocking putting the cat amongst the pigeons for at least 60 minutes, and then the fitness kind of telling first game of the season factor.
I feel extremely confident in saying that Japan will score a lovely try.
Yeah.
That's my prediction for the game.
One lovely Japanese try coming
up. At least one lovely Japanese try.
The result doesn't matter when the try's that lovely.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to score a very good try, but I think that the Lions, with all of their quality,
fitness maybe off the back of the
campaign. It's not. Fitness is such an easy thing to say. I think the Japanese Lions are fit, but I just don't know if they're as strong as the Lions guys. The Lions pack is elite, and I definitely think it'll be fun to see. Potentially Conan and Byrne and Tipperick in those, certainly in that second half.
Such a ball playing back row. It'd be lovely to see them out wide linking.
Getting the better of the Japanese out wide would be my prediction. I remember seeing Conan assist a couple of lovely tries against Japan.
Yes, he had a very good tour against them where he was just shrugging them off because he's very physical. There's definitely scope for that to be the way it goes. I expect the last quarter to be the Lions. But hopefully it'll be a good spectacle up in Murrayfield for those in attendance as well. And it'll just be exciting to finally kick this Lions tour off once and for all, officially have it underway. And what a curtain raiser for an obviously strange tour, all these circumstances notwithstanding. It's just exciting to see a fixture like this. Like, it's just an unusual, interesting fixture in Test match.
Test Rugby is back, and it has all the intrigue of the Lions series as well. So looking forward to this one on Saturday.
Yeah. Thank you for tuning in to the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed what you hear, please like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below as well. We enjoy hearing your opinions too. Thank you.